This all-American tale stars one of the Arabian horse community's most colorful, outspoken, and brilliant breeders, Daniel C. Gainey, with a select group of Arabian horses cast in various supporting roles. The story opens dramatically on August 23, 1940, in Owatonna, Minnesota, where Gainey was building a small company named Jostens into the largest national manufacturer of glass rings and other school items. On that summer day, the sales force had gathered, and his 15-year-old son, Daniel J. Gainey, was there to sell soda pop to the employees. He recalls,
"My dad had given his traditional bon voyage speech to the salesman, and the group, as they customarily did, gave him a great hand, because he was indeed a fabulous speaker. And before the meeting was adjourned, the oldest salesman in terms of point of service got up and started reading a citation. And the sales force at that point gave my dad a little Arabian stud colt by the name of Cainite.
Within days after the event, A.W. Harris, president of the Arabian Horse Registry and the colt's breeder, called Gainey from Chicago.
Harris said, "The next time you're in Chicago, I'd like to have you come by to see me, because anyone whose employees think highly enough of to buy him an Arabian horse has to be pretty special." And they became lifelong friends. And Harris ultimately arranged for my dad to get on the Arabian Horse Registry Board, and subsequent to that, Dad replaced him as its president.
Before receiving his first Arabian, Gainey had two saddlebred mares that he alternated riding in the local shows in southern Minnesota. Once he had met an Arabian, however, there was no turning back.
I don't think he started out intending to become such an influential factor in the Arabian business. He raised good horses, and he acquired some good horses. He reveled in his successes. But I don't think he started out to do that. I think that there was a man who just loved his horses.
Gainey set out to learn all he could about the breed as his lifelong passion began. He inevitably ended up at Selby Stud in Ohio, one of the few Arabian horse farms in the 1940s. Roger Selby's farm manager, Jimmy Dean, showed him the available mares, and Gainey was especially attracted to the Mirage daughter, Rajima, out of the Nazim daughter, Karima. Rajima was in foal to the double Skaronic bred Raffles, but Gainey needed time to think over the purchase and return home. Back in Minnesota, he was hospitalized with a serious case of pneumonia, and later told friends that while he lay there, he decided to buy Rajima if he lived. The minute the oxygen tent was removed, Gainey called Jimmy Dean and mailed him a check that afternoon. Perhaps it was the luck which always seemed to shine upon Gainey, for Rajima would give birth to Gahela, a filly who would go on to become one of the two most valuable female taproots of the magnificent Gainey tree for the next 30 years. The other taproot was Bride Rose by Ronick, and out of Rose of France, who produced Galley Rose, dam of U.S. national champion Galazon. Gainey continued to purchase horses for his herd from some of the top breeders of the day: L.W. Boss Van Vliet, Henry Babson, Roger Selby, and A.W. Harris. From Van Vliet, he bought two Racine daughters, Elena and Raluma, which was in foal to the Mirage son Rafage. Soon after, Raluma produced Gazar. Later, Rajima produced two champion sons by Gazar, Gallimar and Scorage, who became Ed Tweed's herd sire at Bruce Alley Ranch. When Gallimar was bred to Bride Rose, they produced the exquisite Galley Rose. made famous in medallions Gainey had made of her image. By the early 1950s, Gainey had developed his own vision of the perfect Arabian horse and was determined to find all the seeds needed to produce it. His quest eventually led him to Frank McCoy.
My dad decided that he needed to get a good stallion to breed to those wonderful mares that he had. And he had heard from some people on the West Coast about a young colt that Frank McCoy had bred. And so he flew out to take a look. I happened to be going to Caltech at the time, and so he called and asked me if I'd like to go along with him to see this colt. We got to Frank's, and they very proudly showed us this stud colt by the name of Ferzan. And Frank quite unabashedly put a $10,000 price on the youngster.
Gainey knew Ferzan was the colt he sought, but $10,000 seemed too high. In November 1953, Gainey sent Preston Dyer to look over the unproven youngster. The high price was firm, but Gainey had decided Ferzan was the horse for him.
My dad loved Ferzan probably more than any horse he ever had. And he just loved to take him out. He loved to go into the stall with him, nuzzle with him. It was a real love affair.
Ferzan was the key to the birth of Gainey's vision. All told, Ferzan would sire at least 23 national winners and countless other show champions. Even more importantly, his remarkable legacy would breed on for generations. At age 2, Ferzan was bred to Regima, Sharaf, Kama, and Gaydina, producing Gazan, Gayfera, Galatina, and Guzan. Gazan is best remembered as the sire of double national champion Rafan. Beginning in 1955, Ferzan was bred to Gehala to produce an unforgettable dynasty that included U.S. national top 10 stallion Gazan and the famous Four Sisters, Gabrielle, a show champion, and the dam of U.S. national champion stallion Gay Adventure. Gay Regima, the most famous of the quartet, a Canadian national champion mare at 12, and an excellent brood mare. Gefera, an exceptional producer and Gainey's favorite riding mare. And Gay Gehala, who produced Canadian national champion stallion Gay Champion, and Canadian top 10 gelding and English pleasure winner Gay Supreme. But the most exciting cross of all was discovered when Mrs. Garth Buchanan of nearby Iowa bred her Azraf daughter Rafames, a Raffles granddaughter, to Ferzan. Gainey, in turn, bred the Ferzan daughter Gay Regima, another Raffles granddaughter, to Azraf, who was by Raffles. Since then, the Ferzan-Azraf combination has been crossed in every conceivable way for several generations. It was magic. When the Ferzan daughter Gay Rose was bred to Azraf, she produced U.S. national champion Galazon, Canadian top 10 stallion Gay Rouge, and U.S. top 10 mare Gay Rose. Other champions from the Ferzan-Azraf cross include Gay Apache, Gehala Beauty, Kumar Azrafzan, and Azraf II. Eventually, mares by Azraf and out of Ferzan daughters were bred back to Ferzan. Although criticized by some, the results soon hushed the critics. For Gainey had finally done it. He had created the Gainey look. Never content to rest on his laurels, however, Gainey continued to experiment. He used the Cravat stallion Royal Diamond to produce a better trot and more size. Then, knowing that Azraf was at least half Polish through his dam Aja 4, Gainey imported Palita, a Comet daughter, who later produced the champion Gay Warsaw by Ferzan. Several top mares were also sent to the LaCroix famous stallion Bosque, adding the mares Gali Petrushka, Gay Ruby, and Gali Croix to the program. Two of Gainey's best, Gavrel and Gay Rajima, were bred to Nabor, a cross which produced U.S. national champion stallion Gay Adventure, and the multiple show champion mare Gay Rajima. Gainey continued through the years with a formula that produced a 25-75 ratio, 25% outcross and 75% Gainey. Although a certain ethereal beauty was uppermost in Gainey's mind, he had not forgotten what Arabians were for and spent hours on horseback, insisting that all his Arabians be trained to ride. Originally based in Minnesota, Gainey's Arabian horses eventually lived at 3 different locations.
Back in the 1930s, my dad bought a 180-acre farm just outside Owatonna, Minnesota. And in the 40s, built a lovely home out there and barns for his prized horses. It became the headquarters of Gainey Arabians, and it remained such until 1978. That property is now owned and operated by the College of St. Thomas in St. Paul, Minnesota, and they have constructed the Daniel C. Gainey Management Conference Center on the property, using Dad's home as kind of as the centerpiece for that operation. In the 1940s, my dad, after spending a lot of winters in the Scottsdale, Arizona area, bought a section of land and built a winter home where he would center his activities during the winter season. He started out with that property only taking a few riding horses down for his own pleasure, but ultimately it became a show place for the Scottsdale show season. It was sold shortly after my dad died to a developer. The Santa Ynez property was purchased by us in the early 1960s. We both thought that we would like to end up living on a ranch somewhere in California. And having searched the state for a number of years, decided on the Santa Ynez Valley. There was nothing on it but rusty barbed wire when we bought the ranch, and it became the headquarters of Gainey Arabians in 1978. I think that some of the best times my father ever had were here on the Santa Ynez Ranch.
Throughout the 40s, 50s, and 60s, Daniel J. Gainey had little to do with his father's horse business, but in the fall of 1976, he was in Minnesota at a Johnston's board meeting, and his father, who had been ill for some time, asked to meet with him. We went for a walk through the pastures and finally ended up leaning on a fence, and he said, "You know, I'd like very much for you to take over this operation." But the son was unsure and told his father that he didn't think he could do it. And he looked me in the eye and he says, "You don't seem to understand. I want you to take over this operation." And what Daniel C. Gainey wanted, Daniel C. Gainey got. I think a lot of people viewed my dad as a dynamic, strong-willed autocrat. But he was more than that. He had an excellent mind, a very high energy level. He had a strength of personality that could take over an entire room or audience.
He had a great sense of humor. And while he was tough-minded, he was also compassionate. He was a giant and a hard act to follow.
But follow he did, to the continued phenomenal success that is Gainey Fountainhead Arabians today, as it celebrated its 50th anniversary in 1990. And as it did for his father, another very special stallion caused Daniel J. Gainey's breeding program to leap forward to further glory. That stallion was Gay Parada. Parada was the result of breeding Jimmy Dean's Azraf daughter Azlita to Ferzan. Through a full exchange agreement, Daniel C. Gainey ended up with the youngster in Santa Ynez. In 1974, he won both the U.S. and Canadian National Pleasure Driving Championships. After Daniel J. took over the operation in 1976, he decided to acquire Parada for himself, and the decision was made to take the beautiful gray stallion all the way to the top.
One of the biggest thrills that I've had during my time in the Arabian horse business was practically at the outset of that period of time when I decided that we were going to campaign Gay Parada to his National Halter Championship. And indeed we did. And that was a total thrill for me. Almost as thrilling as that was to bring him back home and to ride him on the trails of our ranch, and once in a while chase a few cows and thoroughly get to know this great horse.
To Daniel J., Gay Parada typifies the Gainey Arabian with his beautiful head, large black eyes, long neck, flat top line, good legs, and excellent disposition.
In my mind, that's what I want to continue to breed. Replicas of Gay Parada.
To help ensure the success of the new Gainey Fountainhead Arabians program, Daniel J. turned to an old family friend.
Jimmy Dean was not only a confidant and advisor to my dad, but I owe him a great deal of thanks too, because early on in my tenure with the Gainey Arabian, Jimmy moved to Santa Ynez and spent almost 2 years with me, giving me the benefit of his vast experience. And I shall ever be grateful to him for that.
Daniel C. Gainey died in 1979 after nearly 40 years of service to the Arabian horse and the Arabian horse community, both national and international. Today, Gainey Arabians continues to flourish at the Santa Ynez Ranch. The herd has been reduced to approximately 40 of the best individuals available. And a new, enthusiastic Gainey, through marriage, Dan's wife, the former Robin Field, entered the scene during the early 1980s. Robin is the granddaughter of R.B. Field, one of the early Northwestern Arabian breeders, and a good friend of Daniel C. Gainey. Field also had concentrated on Raffles bloodlines. Robin recalls childhood summers spent playing with the mares in the pastures at Leavenworth, Washington. Robin has come to be fully involved in the day-to-day management of Gainey Arabians.
What I see for Gainey Arabians in the future is to preserve the type that was created by Daniel C. Gainey. What we need to do now is find a different outcross with Azraf gone. We have experimented with a number of other stallions for an outcross, and we've had some great success.
2 recent success stories come from Gay Parada, his 2 sons, Gay Argosy and Gay Seance, both born in 1981 and both national champions. Argosy in English pleasure driving, an informal combination with a 1990 U.S. Top 10 in halter. And Seance as 1987 U.S. Reserve National Champion Stallion. A new outcross has been found in Bayshah for Gainey Arabians. In 1991, as if to illustrate the future success of this cross, a Bayshah daughter out of a Gainey-bred mare was named U.S. and Canadian national champion mare. Her name, Geisha. Now, more than 50 national winners and scores of show champions have been bred by Gainey, or have both parents who are Gainey bred. The scope and influence of the Gainey Arabian horse is nearly incomprehensible. And it all began with one man and his vision.
In terms of his breeding program and most other successful programs, I think my dad had a statement that should be used as a fundamental precept, and it's been quoted a number of times. My dad said, "I have always tried to build as nearly as possible what I think is the ideal Arabian. I have not rushed to accept fads. I have not hurried. In business, I counted the time by decades. In breeding elegant Arabians for today and forever, a little longer is necessary."